Welcome to The Explainer. We're going to talk about a single deal today, one that's quietly redrawing the entire global map of power. And it's a story about a new kind of currency, one you can't just print. Nope, you've got to dig this one right out of the ground. So, for decades, right, we thought about power in terms of dollars, markets, financial strength. But what if that's all changing? What if the real power is shifting to the physical stuff that actually builds our future? I'm talking about rare earths and critical minerals, the things that power literally everything from your phone to a fighter jet. And just so we're on the same page, rare earths are this group of 17 key elements. They're basically the secret sauce in everything from wind turbines to missile guidance systems. Absolutely crucial. All right, so let's get right into it. The opening move was made in February 2026. And look, this wasn't just some boring trade deal, no way. This was a geopolitical earthquake. You had two giants from the global south, India and Brazil, signing an agreement that sent shockwaves all the way from Washington to Brussels to Beijing. And to really get why this is such a big deal, we've got to look at who stands to gain. So let's start with the first major ripple effect. This deal, it basically supercharges the entire BRICS alliance. This wasn't just India and Brazil doing their own thing. Oh no, this was a masterstroke for the whole bloc, a group that's more and more defining itself by one thing, its control over the world's raw materials. And you can see why it works so well. It's a perfectly symbiotic relationship. Take Brazil. It's sitting on about 19% of the world's rare earth reserves. This pact, for them, means they're not just a simple supplier anymore. Suddenly, they're an indispensable strategic partner. It's their chance to pull in Indian investment and, crucially, build up their own refining capabilities. And for India, it's all about locking down a direct supply line to the minerals that are absolutely essential for their booming AI, defense, and green tech industries. And here's what's really fascinating. The deal aligns perfectly with India's core doctrine of Atmanirbhar Bharat, which basically means strategic self-sufficiency. The whole idea is to build a future where India isn't dependent on its rivals, especially China. This pact is a giant leap forward for them. But get this, it even includes a naval component for its submarines. So you see, this isn't just about economics. It's about projecting power, securing trade routes that stretch all the way from the Indian Ocean to the South Atlantic. It's basically a blueprint for becoming a true global power. Okay, now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. When you add Brazil's massive reserves to what China, Russia, and the other new BRICS Plus members already have, well, what you see is a jaw-dropping consolidation of power. The bloc now effectively controls something like 72% of the world's known rare earth reserves. Think about that. They're basically cornering the market on the most vital resources of the 21st century. This table really lays it all out, doesn't it? It shows how the pact strengthens every core member, creating this powerful synergy. China gets to solidify its leadership role, Brazil gets to make this major pivot as a key partner in the global south. For Russia, it just validates their whole commodity power argument against the West. And even for members like South Africa, it gives them momentum to build new trading platforms completely outside of Western control. See how that works? Each piece reinforces the others, cementing their identity as the world's club of raw materials. All right, so we've seen how the BRICS nations are building this resource fortress. Now let's flip the coin and look at the other side. Because this new reality, it has sent the traditional Western powers into an absolute frantic scramble. It's like they've suddenly woken up and realized their access to these critical materials is no longer a given. This number, it just says it all. 98%. That's Europe's staggering, almost total dependency on China for its rare earth imports. That one statistic lays bare just how vulnerable the continent is. I mean, its entire green and digital future, we're talking the Green Deal, the digital decade, the whole shebang. It's all hanging by a thread held by Beijing. And you can just feel the panic when you look at this timeline. The EU, they started talks with Brazil back in January 2026, but they just moved too slowly. By February, boom, India had already sealed its pact. And then, come March, the United States, seeing exactly which way the wind was blowing, acted decisively. They swooped in and secured a key mineral deposit with a quick $465 million deal. And the EU? They were left complaining from the sidelines. So here's the crucial point. Even as the US is racing to diversify its sources, signing these huge deals with allies like Australia and Japan, it still runs smack into a massive bottleneck. Because you can have all the raw ore in the world, right? But it's pretty much useless if you can't process it. And right now, China controls nearly 90% of all global refining. That's the real choke point. And that brings us to China, which, finds itself in this really fascinating, kind of complex position. On one hand, the India-Brazil pact is a direct challenge to its monopoly. But in a weird way, it also plays right into its bigger long-term goals. Beijing is playing a brilliant, brilliant long game here. So, how are they doing it? Well, it's a two-pronged strategy. On one side, China is using its current dominance as a massive bargaining chip. Picture this. At a big summit on March 31st, 2026, they can just threaten to restrict exports to get what they want from the US, concessions on things like microchips or sanctions. But at the same time, they're investing in joint refining projects with their BRICS partners. Why? Because that lets them keep their iron group on the most valuable part of the supply chain, cementing their central role inside the bloc. It's really clever. This table gives us a perfect snapshot of the new global chessboard. You've got the US scrambling to build an allied supply chain, but they're fighting against time and money. The EU is kind of caught in the middle, facing this intense competition and, honestly, its own strict regulations. China, meanwhile, is skillfully playing its hand. And the BRICS bloc as a whole, they're building this powerful resource oligopoly, though they do have to manage their own internal rivalries, especially that tricky one between India and China. So where does all this lead? I mean, this is bigger than just who builds the next Tesla or the next fighter jet. We could be looking at the very first stages of a fundamental rewriting of the entire global economic system. A shift so profound, it might just redefine what national power even means. You know, some economists have a name for this, Bretton Woods III. Okay, quick history lesson. Bretton Woods I pegged global currencies to the US dollar, which was backed by gold. Bretton Woods II was the system of floating currencies we've had for decades, still dominated by the dollar. This new theory suggests we're now entering a third era, one where economic power isn't anchored in financial promises, but in actual control over real, physical stuff, commodities. And this comparison makes that shift crystal clear. For the last half-century, power has basically meant financial capital, right? With the US dollar sitting at the center of the universe. This new, emerging era suggests that power is going to flow to whoever controls the physical resources, the critical minerals that are the literal bedrock of our modern economy. This chart just visualizes that new global divide perfectly. On one side, you have the West, which still controls the financial software of the world. You know, the banking systems, the investment markets, the dollar. But on the other side, you've got the BRICS Plus nations, and they're quickly consolidating their control over the physical hardware of the global economy. And as we all know, you can't run software without hardware. This quote right here just captures the essence of this whole thing. It's saying that in a world with many different centers of power, the tangible things you can actually hold in your hand, the lithium, the cobalt, the neodymium, they might end up being worth a lot more than just numbers on a screen. So, we're left with a massive question, aren't we? As this race heats up to control the building blocks of the future, who's ultimately going to win? The bankers or the miners? Those who control the flow of money or those who control the flow of metal? And believe me, this is way more than just some academic debate. A world dominated by resource holders could mean fractured supply chains, tech blocks where Western innovations literally can't be built without Eastern materials, and maybe even a new kind of Cold War, fought not over ideology, but over the periodic table itself. The answer is going to define not just the economy of the 21st century, but its conflicts, too.